We don't have to. We don't have to limit many of these services to our statutory definition of a rural community. We do have a definition both in the Housing Act and in the Farmers Home Administration Act, which defines a rural community for purposes of benefiting from those acts as a really it defines a rural resident. Mm-hmm. And said a rural resident is a fellow who lives on a farm in the open countryside or in a community with a population not greater than 5,500. There are, however, lots of communities that are rural-oriented, they may be 25 or 30,000 in population, but their welfare is bound up with the rural welfare. They're a hub or a trading center for a rural area. We wouldn't hesitate to make the services of the Technical Action Panel available in such a situation for planning in their total commuter distance kind of planning and planning the proper interrelationship between rural and urban in this instance. But the Farmers Home Administration wouldn't be able to render loan service in those in the community above 5,500.
But through the Technical Action Panel, you might be able to steer the larger community to the proper place.
Right.
Carl, who's on your state Technical Action Panel today?
Well, Bill Berkeley, ASCS, Executive Director. Keith Myers, State Conservationist. Art Eggers of Crop Insurance. And Schultz, I think it's Harold Schultz, Forest Service. We have Martin Holm of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Holm, H-O-H-M. Yeah. Dr. John Stone, Extension Service. Dwayne Ocker, Dean of Agriculture. And let's see, Harold Burton, U-R-T-O-N. We'll get these names for sure afterwards. State Vocational Agriculture Director. Then forget which one it is for sure. The different one comes each time. It's State Game, Fish and Parks Department. Don Hayes of REA. That's it. I might have missed one.
Small business?
They come occasionally, and not all the time. If it would involve them, some project they can.
Your state panel looks over the entire state.
Right. On the county level, it's FHA, SES, ASC, and Extension, and the other agencies if they're in the county, or whatever other agency might be involved in the project they're involved in. Technical Action Panel is made up of USDA agencies, plus other agencies, both federal and state. It might be in the area.
We're in last fiscal year we did just over $1 billion worth of total credit business in the country. This compares to about 300 million in 1960. About 60% of that $1 billion is represented by loans that we insure, loans that are made by private investors.
What percentage?
About 60%, about 600 million of that $1 billion was private money, which we
Co-sign.
co-sign. We guarantee repayment of it. Congress has an indirect control over that program, over that level of program. There is a ceiling on the amount we may insure of certain types of loans in any one year. For example, these association loans to which you referred a moment ago, plus our farm ownership loans, our farm real estate loans, the combination of those two may not exceed $450 million in any year. Until this last Congress, there was a $300 million ceiling on the amount of housing loans which we could insure in any one year, but in the demonstration cities bill that was passed in the closing days of the 89th Congress, that ceiling was removed, and so we have no upper limit on the amount of housing loans we may approve on an insured basis. We're still our direct loans are primarily our farm operating loans. There's in the neighborhood of $300 million a year of that kind of activity. We make some direct loans for community facilities. When we make a loan for community facilities, either a water system or a sewer system, to a public body, we make it direct rather than insured. This is because of the wishes of the Treasury Department. Treasury doesn't like to have us put a government insurance endorsement on a tax-exempt bond. Their argument is that the tax exemption goes to the investor. The benefit of the tax exemption accrues to the investor rather than to the public body when government insurance is on it. So we do about $100 million a year of that kind of direct loan business, and that makes up about the $400 million, the 40% of the $1 billion that.
So your emphasis is changing from direct loans to insuring loans.
That's right.
Guaranteed
That's
loans
right.
more so.
5 years ago, only 5% of our total volume of business was insured, and today 60% of it is. Most of our increased activity has come about through the more liberal authority we have to insure now than we had previously. And this has many merits. It doesn't get into consideration when the national debt ceiling is bothersome.
So your agency then is not under these pressures of this general cutback and holding back of payment of allocated funds.
Well, we're under the same pressures in a sense. That is, when the economy is, to use the term that's being tossed around Washington, when it becomes overheated, when there are inflationary pressures that need to be controlled, then those inflationary pressures are fed by any construction that takes place regardless of the source of funds. So the executive branch may impose program levels upon us lower than well, yes, and lower than the Congress authorized in the Act. And this
Congress
is
will set limits on the dollar volume of certain types of insured loans.
right.
And the appropriate funds for the direct loans that FHA makes, and these are within the administration by executive order can set a program limit.
Right.
You're insured.
Right.
So you're not going to insure $450 million in new construction some year.
We would
If they
we
feel
would be
that,
we would
this
be
would
under
take one of the
we would be under constraint to make our contribution to any total national effort to
But you're more
keep-
immune from an economy-minded Congress than some of the other agencies.
yes we are.
Because yours is like the Federal Housing Agency is more insuring of private capital.
That's
Putting
true.
risk on the private investors.
Of course, I think we're immune from an economy-minded or a conservative Congress for another reason. I start with the basic assumption that our representatives in Congress are responsible people, regardless of the party they belong to. They're determined to be responsive to the needs of their constituency. And they recognize that problems exist, and they're going to do something about solving those problems. Now, they may take a different approach. This upcoming Congress with 47 new Republican members might take a different approach to solving problems than the last Congress would have with 47 more Democratic members. But I don't think that any Congress ever is going to ignore the existence of problems and simply turn their back on them. Now, if it's true that this upcoming Congress is likely to be more conservative than the past one, then it would seem to me they would adopt more conservative means of solving problems rather than ignoring those problems. And I don't know any more conservative approach to solving the problems of rural communities and rural people than lending them money which they repay with interest. This is a pretty conservative answer to the problem-solving situation. So I believe this is the real reason that we can look forward to continued support from the Congress, because we do have a pretty conservative kind of answer to the solution of problems in rural America.
Well, in South Dakota, your percentages stay about the same on insured versus direct loans.
Yes, it runs around 50% here. It has last year and this year.
50% insured. 50% What is your dollar volume?
Last year it was 29.5 million, and I would guess it'll be about the same this fiscal year that we're in now.
Mr. Birch, while we're on the subject of your funds, recently the USDA budget was cut back by some $350 million. Now, a large chunk of this, and I believe it was about $100,000, was cut out of the FHA program funds. Now, what are your views on this cutback, and how is it going to affect our South Dakota farmers who are so dependent upon these FHA operating loans in their operation?
Actually, we're talking about efforts to bring about economies in this current fiscal year, 1967 fiscal year, and it's true that the